Hello and welcome to Bullseye Interviewer Training, interviews that hit the mark. This training class will provide you with practical guidance on conducting effective interviews. This training class consists of a couple of videos and quizzes along the way, as well as a certification test at the end. The training class will provide you with insight into how to conduct an effective interview. Session objectives. By the end of this session, first of all, you will be able to plan an effective interview strategy. Secondly, you'll learn to develop solid job-related questions so you can really get to the bottom of what you're looking for in a candidate. Thirdly, we'll focus on the legal issues regarding hiring so we can avoid the possibility of discrimination. And overall, we'll learn to conduct successful interviews that are respectful, insightful, and effective. Starting from the big picture, we want to make sure that supervisors and managers understand why interviews are so important. First of all, they provide you with information you need to make the best hiring decisions. We also want to make sure that we evaluate candidates objectively. Sure, there's an element of subjectivity in our decision, but we have to make sure that it's based on fact and evidence. We want to hire the candidate that's the best fit for the job. Therefore, we need to ask good questions to really determine who the best fit for the job would be. So interviews are one of the most important functions of a supervisor or manager. And even if you're just participating on a panel, you have the opportunity to have your input heard and ensure that you obtain great coworkers. Here are some of the common mistakes we'll learn to avoid in our interview process. The first mistake is focusing on deficiencies from a previous employee. If the past employee was not analytical enough, you might be looking for someone with strong analytical skills. However, that might not be the most important factor. So it's important to really sketch out what you're looking for and then ask questions accordingly. The second common mistake is asking unlawful questions. In the resources, you'll find a list of inappropriate questions based on EEO and state law. So take a look at that list to ensure that you understand what the legal issues are. But some common unlawful questions are, how old are you? What kind of last name is that? Or other kinds of questions that are protected by state and federal law. The third common mistake is making snap decisions. You really need to be systematic in your decision making. The fourth mistake is forgetting about common values. Your organization has spent a lot of time developing a list of values that it thinks are important in terms of how employees should act and behave in order to support customers, the environment, or other shareholders. So use those values as criteria to determine whether the applicant is going to be a good match for your values. The fifth common mistake is not preparing questions in advance. In order to be systematic and consistent in our interviews, we really need to have a list of questions prepared in advance that we ask each and every applicant. The Bullseye system can assist you with that, and you'll be able to formulate your own questions that are direct and to the point and result in good information from your applicants. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to talking about these very important subjects so you can be the best interviewer you can be. Let's talk about interview preparation. Every organization has a different process for evaluating the job, posting the job, testing, and conducting the initial screening. Remember that every step along the way of the recruiting process must be systematic to ensure fairness and consistency. Many interviewers don't prepare at all, and the result is an inconsistent and chaotic interview process. So let's do a better job than that. Here are some tips for reviewing applications. Before beginning the selection interview, take a few moments to review the job description and establish selection or evaluation criteria that you want to utilize when reviewing the applications of the candidates. The purpose of having a selection criteria is to assist you in identifying and narrowing your candidate pool by categorizing and distinguishing those applicants who are best qualified to perform the job. When reviewing resumes or applications, look for red flags that may call into question the applicant's suitability for the position. Note anything that seems overly general, vague, or unusual. Note misspellings, gaps of employment, and blanks left empty on the application form. Here are some examples of red flags. Rounded off dates, for example, 2015 rather than May 2015. Another red flag is reasons for leaving past jobs. If they mention personal reasons, you should ask about that, particularly if it was vague or very negative. We'll talk later about what to do if a question comes up regarding a protected activity. Also, examine gaps in employment history. A gap may or may not be cause for concern, but you need to find out the reason before making an assessment. Another red flag would be jobs with decreasing responsibility or decreasing pay rates. You want to see a logical progression in their career. Short-term employment at several jobs and multiple shifts in career path or job hopping. Overly vague or general job duties or job titles. For example, an applicant may write that he or she was or is responsible for contract administration as a job duty. Explore this phrase further to determine what it means. The administration could have been obtaining certificate of insurance or getting the contract signed. Similarly, different organizations may use the job title administrative assistant to describe duties ranging from a secretary to a mid-level managerial position. These red flags might be knockout factors, or they may be just topics you want to explore further. What people have done in the past is the best indicator of what they will do in the future. This is the foundation of competency-based interviewing. If you truly understand and accept this premise, it will structure your whole interviewing approach, and your chances for success will go way up when you make your decision based on sound, factual data about an applicant's past work history. So ask questions which focus on the applicant's past performance. An applicant's past will offer you tangible facts upon which you can make reliable assumptions. Ask an applicant what he or she has done for employers in the past, and you'll gain fairly quickly a sense of the kind of performance you can expect. Avoid hypothetical questions or questions that address the applicant's personal lifestyle or habits. These will only provide you with information that is either unreliable or irrelevant to the position or unlawful. Ask questions that relate directly to your listed requirements. If you maintain a one-to-one correspondence between questions and requirements, you'll be able to gain the most information possible in the time allotted for the interview. Of course, each question may lead to additional conversation and follow-up questions. That type of interaction is the key to a truly successful interview. But when you initiate a new topic for conversation, make sure that it relates directly to one of your requirements. That way, subsequent discussion will help you place the information you gain in a clear and understandable context. To summarize, establish the position responsibilities, determine your requirements, and measure each applicant against these criteria. Only then will you be able to make the kind of hire that paves the way for future success, for your new employee, for your organization, and for you as a hiring manager. You certainly can probe for more than a rehearsed answer, or if the applicant comes up blank. You can assist them by saying, I am sure in your position at XYZ you had experience in this area, but don't badger them for an answer. Simply move on to your next question. Preparing your interview questions. This brings up the point that we need to have a list of prepared questions in advance to ensure that we are consistent in our interview process. Some interviewers think they can simply wing it and conduct the interview like a normal conversation, but there are several issues with this approach. The questions are not consistent from one applicant to the next. You might grill one person on their technical skills and talk about things you have in common with another applicant, failing to evaluate their specific skills. We also need to ensure the conversation does not veer off into unlawful areas such as childcare, age, medical issues, or another protected area. We will get to the legal issues in this module, and we will tell you how to handle the interview if an issue does come up. Telling the applicant that we have an agenda prepared of questions we will ask each and every applicant, and sticking to that agenda demonstrates that we have a process and we will stick to it. The best types of questions to ask are those about past experiences. The response will be anchored in an event that really happened and situations that they really encountered. Sure, they can make up a response tailored to what they think you want to hear, but that is hard to do on the fly. Ask about circumstances, actions, results, and outcomes. Avoid closed-end questions and also avoid hypothetical questions. By using the Bullseye database, you'll get pre-formulated questions that are in the perfect format. Experts agree that you should hire for attitude but train for skills, but that's simplistic. Behavioral interviewing is also popular, but that is only about behaviors. Others use the model KSA, or Knowledge, Skills, and Abilities, for scoping the job with a job description, job scorecard, or a job posting. These articles highlight the need to focus on behaviors. Clearly, we need a balanced approach for evaluating candidates. Successful investor and author Ray Dalio's book Principles from 2017 states that to hire well, one needs a more scientific process that precisely matches people's values, abilities, and skills with the organization's culture and its career paths. Many employers don't ask any questions about values, so it's important to have a balanced approach when you're asking questions of all applicants, focusing on knowledge, skills, values, and behaviors. Another theory divides skills into the two spheres of the brain, the left brain and the right brain. Left brain, or technical skills, are topics such as logic, rules, analysis, rationality, knowledge, language, objectivity, math, science, and computer skills. Skills on the right side of the brain include topics such as creativity, intuition, curiosity, chaos, art, the big picture, belief, freedom, and passion. This is based on the publication called Lateralization of Brain Function by neuropsychologist and Nobel laureate Roger Wolcott-Sperry. This model basically divides skills into technical skills on the left side and interpersonal skills on the right side. The Bullseye model takes all of these different theories and puts them into one simple model with 4 quadrants: knowledge, skills, values, and behaviors. The first quadrant is knowledge. Knowledge is what they know about the industry, the market, the job functions, their education, or any specialized expertise they have. Topics would be accounting, the company, customer, education, expertise, industry, job functions, learning, and products. This is basically information that they know or have obtained through education or experience. A good way to assess their knowledge level is to give them a simple test that could be done prior to the interview or after. However, just because they have the knowledge does not mean that they actually have the skill. Skills would be what they can do or have done, how they have impacted performance, productivity, and the bottom line. Skills can be gauged from past experiences or choices or by skill-based tests. Topics in the quadrant of skills would be analysis, budgeting, customer service, equipment, graphics, management, organization, presentations, project management, research, sales, social media, time management, training, and writing. Skills are basically what they can do or have done in terms of work product, examples, projects, or goals they have achieved. On the right side are beliefs or values, and values is what they think is important and what the organization has determined to be the important operating philosophies and principles. Organizations spend a significant amount of time and effort putting together stated values, and interviewing is one way to ensure that your hires demonstrate those values. Select from the topics listed here and ask each and every applicant about what they have done in their career to demonstrate that value. Some examples are accountability, community, commitment, diversity, entrepreneurship, the environment, ethics, integrity, quality improvement, responsibility, and respect, although there are several more listed in the Bullseye database. And finally, behaviors are how they act and respond, including their own self-management, their communication style, and their work style. Examples of topics in the behaviors category are communication, change, conflict, creativity, initiative, motivation, multitasking, professionalism, self-awareness, self-direction, stress, management, and teamwork, although there are several more topics under behaviors as well. The Bullseye Interview database has 100 topics to choose from within those 4 quadrants, providing about 5 questions per topic, giving you a wide variety of questions to choose from. Use the Bullseye Interview database to select enough questions for your screening interviews on the phone or via Zoom, as well as your face-to-face interviews. Choose enough questions so that you can conduct your screening interviews as well as your multiple interviews that you might have. 10 to 20 questions per 45-minute interview is usually sufficient. Save and print your agenda and bring it to the interview to demonstrate to the applicant that you have a list of questions that you're going to be asking each and every applicant, and use the area provided to take notes during the interview. Every organization has their own way of evaluating applicants, either thumbs up, neutral, or thumbs down, or rating scales of 1 to 5 or 1 to 10. If you do take notes, make sure that you don't write down anything discriminatory or inappropriate. And keep a copy of the interview agenda in your recruiting file for 2 years to demonstrate that you had a consistent, solid process. However, don't keep copies of all the individual applicant evaluations in the file. Each question provides an answer guide on what to look for in the applicant's response to your question. You can also select from pre-made job-specific templates that are a selection of attributes that are common to specific positions. Also included are additional resources such as forms, tools, and checklists that will assist you in standardizing your interview process. For more information, see bullseyeinterview.com. This section will talk about conducting the interview, developing rapport with the applicant, and sticking to the agenda of prepared questions you have. Here are some tips about meeting logistics. Make sure that the location you select for the interview has a certain amount of privacy, and be sure you turn off your phone so you aren't interrupted. No one can be effective in back-to-back interviews all day long. You need to be able to pace yourself and begin each interview with a fresh perspective. For that reason, consider these suggestions. Don't schedule too many interviews in one day. You won't get your other work done and you won't be fresh for each interview. Don't do interviews back-to-back. It's degrading to the applicant to be treated like one of many in the process and makes it seem like a competition. So try to schedule some time between your interviews to ensure that you have a break as well. And you might want to limit your interviews to 45 minutes. Shorter is better, particularly if the applicant is meeting several people. You can always bring the person back for a second interview or call them to clarify a specific point. While a follow-up call or interview is not ideal and is not suggested for all applicants, there is no need to keep the applicant there all day unless the person is from out of town. Let's talk about the interview itself. You want to be careful about your body language as well as read the body language of the applicant. And it's important to have the applicant be at ease so they're comfortable in giving you responses to your questions. And the more comfortable they are, the better answers they'll give you. Start out with a simple icebreaker to get them talking and start developing rapport. Examples of icebreakers might be the type of industry they've worked in the past, or the geographical area that they're from, or various job duties or responsibilities that caught your attention. There are 3 advantages of this approach to small talk. First, applicants will be put at ease when they begin discussing their own background. Second, the interview begins quicker and you have a chance to find out more about your applicant earlier in the interview. And third, applicants will be pleased that you remembered something about them and therefore will be more likely to trust you. This increases your chance of getting revealing, honest answers. Note that small talk can open an employer's door for potential problems by revealing information that cannot legally be used in the hiring process. For example, although asking an interviewee where he or she went to high school may not be unlawful in and of itself, follow-up about the year of graduation could reveal the applicant's age. If the applicant is over 40 years old, he or she may feel that any decision not to extend an employment offer was based upon unlawful age discrimination. Interviewers must be careful not to make small talk that would invite answers revealing the individual's national origin, age, family situation, or other areas that could invite discrimination claims down the road. To get the interview started, introduce yourself and your role, and anyone else who is participating in the interview. Introduce the main points of the job without giving away exactly what you're looking for. Some things that you might want to say to kick off the interview include stating, I have a list of questions and I will ask the same questions to each and every applicant. And after my questions, I'll give you the opportunity to ask me a few questions. The interview should last about 45 minutes. If you're ready, let's get started. This way the applicant knows what to expect. Here are some points you want to keep in mind while conducting the interview. First of all, you're in control, so stick to your agenda. Listen and allow the applicant to answer and elaborate. Try to talk 20% of the time and listen 80% of the time. Keep your part of the conversation brief. Stick to your list of questions and ask probing questions as follow-on, if appropriate. Nod and encourage them. Make sure that they feel comfortable in conducting the interview. Make sure that you pace the interview so you can get through all of your questions. Again, you're supposed to be asking each and every applicant the same questions, so make sure you stay on pace. Allow the applicant to ask you a few questions towards the end, but you shouldn't let the applicant interview you. End on a positive note. Be respectful and positive at all times. Some of the things you don't want to do is to ask personal questions. Again, if you stick to your agenda, you won't have any problems veering off course. Also, suspend your judgment. Don't allow superficial impressions to influence your decision. Don't make any promises about a job. Don't ask the applicant when they can start. They may interpret that as getting the job. And also make sure that you're not asking any possibly discriminatory questions. A few more reminders: don't cross-examine or interrogate the person. Stick to your list of prepared questions that are simple and straightforward, and avoid asking any irrelevant questions. If you have your list of questions prepared in advance and stick to it, you should have a good, well-planned out interview. If you've reached the end of your interview agenda, you're ready to wrap the interview up. Thank them sincerely and be positive. Let them know any next steps in terms of the process and timing, but don't make any promises or give them any indication that they got the job. Here are some key points. Interviews are an essential part of the hiring process, but there's more to come. For example, tests, reference checking, and other steps along the way of the recruitment process. But in terms of conducting an interview, make sure that you prepare your questions in advance. Create the agenda and stick to it. Avoid potentially discriminatory questions and judgments. And remember that respect goes a long way. Relax and be confident. And remember, the more comfortable your applicant is, the better answers they're going to be able to provide to you for your interview. Hopefully these tips will assist you in conducting an effective, insightful interview. This section is about legal issues. This section will give you a sense of the federal and state laws you need to know about in order to avoid issues with the law. First of all, let's talk about the federally protected categories having to do with discrimination law. The law that was sort of started the civil rights movement in the 1960s was called Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. This law initially protected people in various groups such as race, sex, color, religion, national origin, ethnicity, and ancestry. After that point in time, several other laws were passed that created similar protected categories, such as a law protecting discrimination based on age. That law was called the Age Discrimination in Employment Act, and it protects people who are over the age of 40. An additional law was passed protecting women who are pregnant or have related medical conditions, such as inability to become pregnant, fertility issues, or pregnancy itself. That law brought us to the 1990s, and in the 1990s a big law was passed called the Americans with Disabilities Act, protecting people with physical or mental disabilities and ensuring that the workplace was open to people with disabilities. The Immigration Reform and Control Act requires us to verify eligibility and authorization to work, but it also prohibits discrimination on the basis of citizenship status. Union membership is protected based on the National Labor Relations Act, and military status is also a protected category based on the Uniformed Services Employment and Reemployment Rights Act. Also, genetic information is protected by the Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act. Additionally, employees who have received benefits such as FMLA or have filed an EEO claim against an employer are also entitled to legal protections. In addition to the federal protections, many states take the liberty of creating additional sets of protected categories. So many states' laws mirror the federal laws, but add additional protected categories, such as marital status, family situation, medical condition, and the like. So check with your state to ensure that you understand what topics are prohibited from discussing in an interview. Those resources can be found in the Free Resources tab on the Bullseye website. This graphic demonstrates that we want to make sure that our questions are consistent and job-related. The minute we're inconsistent about any step along the way of our hiring process, the case could be made that that's unfair and potentially unlawful. And so in order to stay in the green area, we want to make sure that we are fair and consistent in all of our actions and decisions. Now, one of the special considerations you need to be aware of is with the Americans with Disabilities Act, and a couple of points to highlight. First of all, the employer may not ask disability-related questions or conduct medical examinations until after they have made a conditional job offer to an applicant. Remember that employers have an obligation to make reasonable accommodations to enable applicants with disabilities to participate in the interview process. And employers cannot ask whether an applicant has a physical or mental impairment, has received workers' comp benefits, or was ever addicted to illegal drugs. If it's a known disability, for example, an employee comes in a wheelchair or they note it to you, you can ask how we can accommodate the disability, but you cannot ask about how they became disabled or what the prognosis or diagnosis of the disability is. Sometimes, inadvertently, a subject will come up in the scope of an interview that should not have. An applicant may offer information about a leave of absence, about their spouse or children, or any other subject on the list of prohibited inquiries. For example, they may bring up FMLA if they want to explain the reason for a gap in employment, or they may inadvertently bring up issues regarding their children. If any of these topics come up, don't get nervous or rattled. Firmly and confidently say the following sample verbiage. That information will not be used to determine whether you are selected. If selected, you can work with HR on an appropriate accommodation. Or childcare or your pregnancy plans will not be used to determine our hiring decisions. This way, you verify to the applicant that you know this is a prohibited inquiry and that information will not be used against them. Just because they may bring an issue up, that does not give you the right to ask about it. So be cautious if one of these topics comes up in the scope of your interview. To avoid legal trouble, treat applicants respectfully. Be consistent. Get your list of questions and stick to that list of questions. Follow through on all of your hiring practices and procedures. And don't make decisions until all candidates have been evaluated and tested in a systematic manner. By following through on your reference checking and background checks will ensure that your hiring practice is fair, consistent, and won't get you into legal hot water.